Deep down, do you feel Cameron wants the best for you? Do you feel this is different from your former marriage? Keisha looked surprised by the question. Of course. Cameron is nothing like Andre, not even in the beginning. Pastor Greg leaned back. Then what's the struggle with trust? I was always told not to trust a man, that they'd mess you up and ruin you. Then I met Andre, and that's exactly what happened. So I don't know if I can trust what I see or if I should stay cautious just to stay safe. That's the definition of survival mode, Pastor Greg said with a soft chuckle, placing a reassuring hand on Keisha's leg. Caution doesn't keep you safe any more than holding a gun guarantees you won't get shot. Women who've been through war and love do not enter new relationships with open arms. They enter with armor. They smile with watchful eyes. They love cautiously, even when the man in front of them is nothing like the one who broke them. Because trauma doesn't know time, it just knows that safety is suspicious. And the hardest part is realizing that after all that surviving, you've forgotten how to live, how to be soft, how to be held without preparing to be dropped. This is a velvet tale, where love is soft but never simple, where hearts unravel in whispers and healing often hides in the arms of another. Keisha couldn't sleep. She just sat in the middle of her king sized bed, locked in a staring contest with a ceiling fan. Tears spilled quietly down her cheeks as she replayed the day in her mind. As a little girl, she had dreamed of this day for so long. Hell, even as a grown woman, she still clung to the dream. Lord knows she'd been unlucky in love. So why, on the day she should have been the happiest, did she feel sadder than ever? Love with Cameron had been safe, consistent, blissful. He was one of the kindest, most gentle men she had ever known. He knew how to handle her, and that wasn't easy. Keisha was complicated and bruised. Most men ran after just one conversation. But Cameron? He saw the bruises, heard the trauma, felt the tears, and stepped closer each time the cracks were revealed. She wasn't used to that kind of response to her brokenness, and a part of her still wondered if he was here to love her or just waiting for the right moment to break her with all she trusted him with. Just as her thoughts began to spiral, she heard movement in the kitchen. Moments later, her 16-year-old son, Joshua, walked into her room holding the rest of the orange juice. Before I finish it, he said casually, his way of saying he wanted to talk. This was their thing. They'd start with the last of one juice and end up pouring their hearts into a new one. Girl drama, school, friends, life. She sat up, waved him over, and took the glass from his hand. For a moment, they sat there, sipping, exchanging quiet smiles. Then he asked, sarcastic as ever, y'all really getting married? She chuckled. Well, we gotta plan the wedding first, but once that's done, I'm sure we will. He smirked, then went quiet. Looked into his glass like he was searching for something deeper. He's nothing like Dad, he said softly. It wasn't a question, but it felt like one. And then, more quietly, that's a good thing. Her breath caught. She looked at her son, this 16-year-old boy with grown man thoughts, and felt tears return to her eyes. It was one of the sweetest moments wrapped in the saddest truth she had ever experienced. Because how do you tell your son, his dad ain't shit? That the man who made him was also the one who broke you. That you've hated the man you created him with for years. You don't. You don't have to. Because in that moment, he just told you he knows. He saw it, felt it, lived it, And more than that, he was giving you his blessing to choose something different. Most of my life, he said, voice cracking slightly. I watched you care for so many people, love so many people, give to so many people, and I never saw any of them give you what he gives you. He looked up at her. I used to think what you and Dad had was goals, because you always fought through it. But with him, you don't have to fight for anything. That's goals, right there. He sipped the rest of the juice, wiped his eyes like it was nothing, and flipped back into cool mode. Then he kissed her cheek and said softly, I love you, Mom. She watched him leave the room, her heart full in a way it hadn't been in years. Joshua had seen everything. He'd witnessed her relationship with his father. He never liked any of the men who came after. But if he was Joshua approved, Keisha knew Cameron was something special. Keisha still couldn't sleep, but the love and excitement buzzing through her veins gave her all the energy she needed. Right on cue, her phone lit up with Cameron's morning text. Good morning, beautiful. Yellow heart. It was followed by one of his signature inspirational quotes, always perfectly tailored to whatever she'd been overthinking that week. She smiled. That was his love language. Gentle consistency. She texted back, thanking him for the inspiration and for one of the sweetest dates she'd ever experienced. He replied with a heart and the phrase, hearing this before I walk into work. Ear emoji. His subtle way of saying, I'll respond later, properly, when I'm free. Because Cameron never liked rushing anything with her. Despite running on zero sleep, Keisha decided to start her day. She made breakfast for the kids, floating through the motions with a dreamy kind of energy. Every time she moved, her rose gold engagement ring caught the light. She couldn't stop smiling, couldn't stop thinking about him. She got lost in thought and accidentally overpoured the milk in her 5-year-old's glass. Milk bath! He shouted gleefully, splashing the milk across the counter. More! More! Keisha laughed. She was so happy, not even a mess could shake her mood. She moved through the morning hustle, buttoning blouses, tying shoes, and brushing ponytails, with a hum in her heart. As she buttoned her daughter's uniform shirt, she didn't realize she'd misaligned it completely. Mom, something's not right, said Jada, her 10-year-old, staring at her reflection. Keisha squinted at the shirt and shrugged. Girl, you can fix it yourself. On the school drop-off drive, Through the Night by Maida blared through her Honda speakers on repeat. The kids exchanged glances, confused. Joshua offered them a subtle head nod, silently saying, let her have this one. She gave each of them extra tight hugs before they hopped out. Even the teen didn't resist. By the time Keisha got to work, the crash was hitting her. The high of love couldn't completely outrun exhaustion. She sat at her desk, yawning, until her ring caught the light on her keyboard. Suddenly, energized again, she walked over to the window and let the sun hit her hand. Each diamond took its turn dancing in the light, reflecting the joy she still couldn't believe was real. Then her Apple Watch buzzed. Cameron. She answered, still at the window, the sunlight warming through her sheer curtains. His voice came through the speaker, deep and soothing. Hello, fiancé. She grinned. Finally. Cameron grinned back, removing the hood of his hazmat suit. How's your day going, beautiful? I've been all out of sorts, thanks to you, she teased. Who you telling? I locked my keys in the car twice today. Oh my God, who bailed you out? Dave. I've been cheesing all day, telling everybody. She said yes. They both laughed. I was nervous as hell, he added. But there's nobody else I'd rather sweat bullets for. You knew I'd say yes, she said with a smile. I'm not letting you get away, Mr. Garrett. And if you said no, I would have asked you 100 more times, Mrs. Garrett. She laughed. I'll report the milk for John John, and Jada's buttons were all over the place. I was like, girl, fix it yourself. Dang, he said, grinning. He loved hearing how his presence in her life was felt. Keisha, I've never been this happy. Me either, she whispered, biting her lip. There was a pause. I can't wait to make love to you, he murmured, now fidgeting with the buttons on his car stereo. He casually queued up Anywhere by 112, their unspoken signal. They never talked directly about sex, both intentionally celibate, but he'd play a song when the heat crept in. And this one always left them both bothered in the best way. They sat silently, both imagining, simmering. As the song faded, they collected themselves and eased back into conversation. That was hot, she said breathlessly. My thoughts are untamed. He laughed. I gotta get back to work before I say something I shouldn't to a beautiful, classy woman of God like yourself. Just make sure you know how to say it when the time comes. Oh, baby, he said, a voice dipping lower. I got a whole book of things I've been waiting to say and do to you. Don't worry about that. Then, softening again. We still on for dinner tonight? Of course, she said, heart fluttering. Okay, tell me something. She smiled. She knew what he wanted. My heart is yours. And you're wearing mine on your finger. He blew her a kiss through the watch and ended the call. Keisha stood still, hand on the glass, smiling like a fool. God, that man never missed a beat. Camron had a way of softening even her sharpest edges. His love was like balm, applied gently to wounds that had long since scabbed over, but never truly healed. Towards the end of her workday, Keisha received an email from Human Resources. A simple reminder. It read, please update your legal name in our system. We are conducting employee audits and notice you no longer use your former married name. Please ensure the legal process is completed. Her stomach flipped, not from excitement, but from pure annoyance. She exhaled deeply, her body slumping slightly in her chair. She had been putting it off, knowing the process would be yet another item added to her already overwhelming to-do list. With 5 kids, a full-time job, wedding planning, and now this? Changing her name legally felt like a mountain and one she resented climbing. Andre was still inconveniencing her, as if wasting 18 years of her life hadn't been enough. She could feel the heat rise in her chest just thinking about it. She and her best friend Tilly had gone back and forth about this. Tilly, ever the voice of reason, told her to just knock it out during the last hour of work. You're allowed to use company time for HR-related tasks, she said. Just get it over with. But Keisha didn't want to just get it over with, because it wasn't just paperwork. It was pain. It was revisiting a name tied to every betrayal, every broken promise, every tear cried into her pillow while her children slept down the hall. She should have never married Andre. Everyone had said it. Friends, co-workers, even her aunties. Everyone but her father. And he was the very reason she walked down that aisle. He reassured her, told her it was the right thing to do, that love would come after the vows, that marriage was about duty and forgiveness, and now he walked around boasting to everyone who'd listen. I told her he wasn't no good. Keisha clenched her jaw. She hated him for that, for convincing her to stay, for giving her bad advice wrapped in a father's pride and parading it as wisdom, for leaving her to pay the price while he smugly claimed foresight. For those 18 years, Keisha had been a stranger to herself. She had no clear view of her own identity, not as a woman, not as a wife. She'd poured herself into motherhood, into survival, and into the illusion of a marriage that had never truly existed. Now, as she sat at her desk, the glare of her monitor softening. Her eyes drifted to her left hand. The rose gold band Cameron had placed on her finger the night before shimmered under the office lights. She rubbed her thumb across it slowly as if trying to memorize its texture, its weight, its promise. Could this end the same way? That single question hit like a rogue wave. No, no, please, God, no. But the thought was there now, planted. And no matter how beautiful the ring or how kind the man, doubt had cracked the surface. Keisha blinked back tears, sat up straight, and shook the thought loose. Cameron was not Andre. Her life was not on repeat. This love was different. It had to be. Still, as she logged off her computer and began packing her things, that lingering fear followed her out the door, like a shadow. The parking lot was nearly empty by the time Keisha made it to her car. The sun was starting to set, casting long golden streaks across her dashboard. She tossed her bag into the passenger seat, exhaled slowly, and sat in silence for a beat before starting the engine. As the Bluetooth connected, her phone began to buzz. Tilly, right on cue. Keisha smiled faintly and answered, putting her phone on speaker. Hey, girl. Tilly's voice came through the car like a breeze. Hey, future Mrs. Gary. You sound tired. Keisha chuckled dryly. That's 'cause I am. It's been a long day. You glowing, though. I already know it. What's up? There was a pause, long enough to feel heavy. Keisha swallowed, then finally said it. I'm scared, Tilly. Scared of what? The wedding? Girl, don't start with me. No, Keisha interrupted, her voice cracking slightly. I'm scared of getting it wrong again. The silence on the other end said more than words ever could. She continued, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. You know, most days I feel good. I feel like I've grown. I feel healed. But then something small will happen and all the old fear creeps back in. Cameron will say something kind, and instead of receiving it, I flinch. Like he's gonna flip the script any day now. I hate that I do that to him. Tilly exhaled. Whew, girl, I feel you. Honestly, that's why I'm single. Most women end up in the same relationships repeatedly. It's like we just swap faces but keep the same pain. I'm not ready to roll those dice again. Keisha nodded slowly, even though Tilly couldn't see her. That hit. But, Tilly continued, you're in a different space now. You got your own place, a car, a good job. You're not dependent on nobody for nothing, even if it don't work out. Keisha cut in softly, her voice trembling. It's not about that, Tilly. It's not about being able to survive if it fails. I already know I can. That's the scary part. Tilly stayed silent, letting her speak her truth. Keisha gripped the steering wheel tightly as her eyes began to sting. It's the thought of what Cameron and I have turning into what Andre and I had. That would ruin me. It would kill something in me that I don't think could come back. Her voice cracked on that last word, and she blinked quickly to keep from crying at the wheel. Tilly's voice came back, this time softer. Girl, I hear you, and you're right to be scared. But what you're scared of isn't Cameron. It's the version of you that stayed too long last time, and you're not her anymore. Keisha sniffled. I hope not. You're not. I see it. Cameron sees it. You got to believe it. Keisha finally pulled into her driveway, cutting the engine and sitting in the silence of her car for a long moment. Thanks for listening, Tilly. Always. Now go love that man before I steal him. They both laughed, light breaking through the heaviness. As Keisha stepped out of the car, she looked up at the night sky and whispered to herself, please, let this be different. She spent the whole night cleaning the house, prepping the kids, and debating what to cook for dinner. It was Cameron's first time meeting all the kids, all five of them, in one room. And even though she was marrying this man, something about that made her both excited and nervous at the same damn time. She knew the backlash he'd face for being with a woman who had five kids. His friends, uncles, even some coworkers clowned him about it. She tried not to let that get to her, but part of her worried. Would tonight's chaos change how he felt? Because being a mom of five meant surprise fights, random crying fits, and the occasional vomit explosion were very real possibilities when guests came over. She had begged the kids to be on their best behavior, but honestly, they were engaged now. He was going to have to get used to the reality at some point. She spent so much time doing the kids' hair and getting them dressed that she only had time for a mini beat. Just eyebrows, concealer, lip gloss, and a quick finger fluff to her curls for that effortless, sexy bedroom look. She was pulling garlic bread from the oven when the doorbell rang. John darted to the front room yelling, "It's him! He's here!" Like it was Christmas morning. The other kids scattered like someone had a dog loose in the house. A normal reaction to company. Keisha saw Cameron smiling through the frosted glass as she approached the door. He smiled, bright, easy, and all hers. "Smells like heaven in here." "You're late," she teased, stepping aside to let him in. "Traffic. But I brought peace offerings." He held up a bottle of wine in a small box. "One for you, one for your sweet tooth." Keisha raised a brow. "Is that cheesecake from Nina's Bakery?" "The one with the caramel swirl. Figured I needed to stay on your good side." She rolled her eyes, but smiled. "You're lucky you're cute." John tugged at Cameron's pants leg. "Want to see the table I helped set?" Cameron immediately knelt. "Of course I do. Lead the way, little man." As they walked off, Keisha watched Cameron letting John grab his hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. No performance, no awkwardness. He just fit. Dinner was loud, in the best way. Journey grilled Cameron with a list of questions she had clearly prepared in advance. "Do you know how to cook? What's your favorite color? Have you ever seen Princess and the Frog?" Cameron answered every question like it mattered, even sang a bar of "Almost There," complete with dramatic hand gestures. The kids were in tears laughing. Keisha hadn't laughed like that over a meal in years. Watching him cut John's spaghetti and pour apple juice without being asked, it did something to her. Made her feel safe in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. After dinner, they all played Uno on the floor. When John threw a tantrum after losing, Cameron didn't snap. He simply invited him to help shuffle the deck. By 9:15, the kids were in bed. Keisha stepped quietly out of their room and found Cameron in the kitchen, putting away leftovers. She leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. "You know you don't have to do that." He looked up. "I know. Doesn't mean I shouldn't." She smiled. "Why?" "Please." They sat on the couch, lights low, a candle flickering on the side table. The kind of quiet that didn't feel awkward, just warm. Keisha handed him a glass and sank into the cushions beside him. "Thanks for tonight." "I should be thanking you. That meal? Chef's kiss." She laughed. "You're just happy to finally eat a home-cooked meal." "That too." He grinned. They sipped in silence for a while. "You're good with them," she said eventually, not looking at him. "Most men get awkward around kids that aren't theirs." Cameron shrugged. "Kids are easy. They want honesty and attention. Adults are the complicated ones." She turned to him. "And you're good with complicated." He met her gaze, slow and steady. I think so. I'm here, ain't I? Keisha felt a knot in her chest begin to loosen, just a little. I've spent so long holding it all together, she murmured, being the one who shows up, who makes everything okay. Sometimes I forget what it's like to be taken care of. Cameron reached for her hand, his fingers brushing hers gently. You don't have to forget, he said. Not with me. She didn't reply. Just let her hand rest in his. Let the moment be what it was. Soft, unhurried, real. Then it crept in. That familiar ache in her chest. The one that shows up when you've survived too much to trust peace. The ache that whispers, don't get used to this. Because this felt good. Too good. The kind of good that used to end in heartbreak. Cameron must have felt the shift. He gently tightened his hold on her hand. You still with me? He asked. She nodded slowly. Yeah. But the truth was, she was fighting it. Fighting that voice that told her to pull away before she got too close. Before the rug got yanked again. I know what you're thinking, Cameron said gently, and I get it. All of it. She raised a brow. You psychic now? No, he said, setting his wine down. But I know what it looks like when someone's holding their breath. Her eyes stung. She looked away. I'm not going anywhere, he added. Not when things get loud. Not when the kids get sick. Not when you don't have all the answers. I'm not afraid of your real life. She turned back to him slowly. You should be. It's messy as hell. He smiled. So am I. Keisha let out a soft laugh. It was quiet, cautious, but real. You don't gotta be still all the time, he said. I know how to hold soft things. God, that man never missed a beat. The silence between them settled like a blanket. Not heavy, just warm. Keisha leaned her head on his shoulder and finally let herself breathe. Not all the way healed, but held. And for now, that was enough. It felt like God had given them a break before the storm because by the following week, Keisha and Cameron were being bombarded with unsolicited advice from family members, most of whom had just found out about their plans to marry. Keisha got calls from all corners of the family, elders, aunties, even third cousins she hadn't heard from in years. Don't do it, they warned. You already had one messy divorce. Just date him this time. Most of them had never even met Cameron. They were going off the mess her father had been spreading. Ain't no single man gonna deal with a woman with all them kids unless he getting something out of it. Her cousin quoted her dad. Apparently, the word around the family grapevine was that Cameron was using Keisha because she had a good job and a nice house. Never mind the fact that Cameron had a solid career and his own well-kept home in the suburbs. Cameron wasn't spared either. Why you want to marry a woman with all them kids? You didn't even get to have fun making them. His uncle scuffed. She gonna get back with their daddy. One added. A woman don't have all them kids with a man unless she still love him. But the worst one came from his own father. She just wants somebody to help raise them kids. The two of them spent hours dodging calls and deleting messages from family members trying to warn them. People who didn't even know either of them well enough to speak on anything real. By the end of the week, they were worn out. So they made a pact. No stress this weekend. Me and the girls are going on a wine tour. Keisha groaned into the phone. Lord knows it's going to take all the wine in Napa to help me unwind after the nosy ass family intervention convention I just went through. Cameron laughed on the other end. Me and the boys are club hopping in San Francisco. Gotta shake off all that negative energy they've been putting in my head. They promised to regroup next weekend, just the two of them. Cameron and his boys had just arrived at Club Lux in San Francisco, a hot new spot with Miami vibes, but a touch more class. The music was hitting. Chris Brown, Migos, and all the latest club bangers. But Cameron wasn't feeling it. All he could think about was her. He sat in their VIP section, thumbing through pictures she sent him. Photos of the two of them, memories from their first date, selfies from random days when she caught him smiling. He wanted to call her so bad, but he didn't want to mess up her night just because he missed her. She rarely got a chance to go out and unwind. So he stayed quiet, eating his feelings and scrolling. Then his phone rang. It was Keisha. "Can you hear me?" she asked, slurring hard. "Yes, baby, I can hear you," he said, already smiling. "I was just thinking about you. I'm not having fun at all, and I think I'm drunk." He sat up straighter. What do you mean you think you're drunk, babe?" "I told Gina I only wanted alcohol-free wine because I had to drive, but I don't think she listened." "Where are you?" His heart started racing. "I don't know, but listen." Her voice cracked. "I'm scared, okay?" He stood and stepped outside the club into the cool air. "Do you want me to come get you?" "No. Listen." She started crying. "I don't know if I want to get married again." Cameron paused. His breath caught halfway between a sigh and a swallow. He didn't know how much of this was drunk talk and how much was truth leaking out. "I'm listening," he said calmly. "Andre did a number on me, Cam, and I can't even take the thought of us becoming that. I love you so much, and if you turn into him or anything like him, it will break me. I'm scared. I don't know you, but I feel like I do." And then came the sound of vomiting. Cameron heard her friends panicking, voices shouting, someone saying to hold her hair, someone else asking where her phone was. Then the call dropped. He sat there frozen for a moment, phone still pressed to his ear. He understood it, all of it. Her fears weren't unfounded. They were built on years of pain. She was triggered, vulnerable, drunk, yes, but speaking truth she tried to keep buried. But what about his fears? He was used to being the one who fell for the woman that didn't feel the same. The ones who were always too busy, too cute to be kissed, or too hot to be tied down. The ones who made him chase until he was exhausted and emotionally broken. Keisha was different. But this was the part they always came back to. Her pulling back, him pressing forward, both of them bleeding from old wounds. He didn't mind scars. He could handle a little blood. But he needed to know her heart was his. He wasn't going to fight to keep someone else's woman. Not again. Cameron and Keisha hadn't spoken since her drunken, emotional rant about her fears of getting it wrong again. Cameron was hurt, and honestly, Keisha didn't remember half of what she said. Just that she'd called him drunk and rambling. "I guess he's mad. Let him stay mad," Keisha snapped, as she wrestled Jada's hair into a ponytail the next morning before school. "What is he mad about, though?" Gina asked, confused. "I really don't know, but I don't have the energy to chase a man this go round. If he thinks I will, he got another thing coming." She yanked Jada's hair a little too tight. "Ouch!" Jada flinched, trying to escape her mother's grip. "Be still," Keisha hissed. "I don't have time for this kind of energy. I've got too much on my damn plate. Andre keeps asking to take Jada and John John for the summer. My job is changing shit every 15 minutes, and my dad is still feeding information to Andre. Girl, that's a lot." Now is not the time for Cameron to be getting in his low feelings. He normally doesn't act like this, but I guess they always show their true colors eventually. I just gotta move on. Like, are y'all breaking up? Or just taking space? I really don't know. But if this is how he acts after asking me to marry him, I may have to rethink my decision. Maybe the thought of marriage is a lot for him too. Maybe he just needed time to process. I can't do this again. I'm just going to call the wedding off. You're serious? Yeah, I'm going to tell him now. I'll call you back after. Okay, let me know how it goes. Gina replied as Keisha hung up. Just as she picked up her phone to call Camron, a text came through. Good morning. Can we talk on my break? No inspirational quote. No, hope your day is amazing. Just straight to the point. Keisha stared at the message, then left it on read. She felt a little guilty, but he'd missed a whole week of good morning texts, and when she texted him first one morning, all he said was, I need some time to think. That was the last thing she'd heard from him. She went about her day. Work, errands, the kids. By the end of the day, the text was still on read. The truth? She planned to break off the engagement, but she was stalling. She didn't want to make a fear-based decision. Still, Cameron's disappearing act made her question his character for the first time. This was exactly the kind of thing that ruined things with Andre. And Keisha refused to be in any relationship where she had to fight for her spot. A whole week passed. Then, out of nowhere, Cameron texted again. Keisha, we need to talk. She read it, then went on with her day. School drop-offs, work, groceries, dinner. But something didn't sit right. There was a pressure on her chest, like the issue had grown heavy enough to demand her attention. So she called him. Hey, he said, transferring the call from his earbuds to his phone speaker. You wanted to talk? She asked. Yes, he replied coldly. That was a week ago. You can always wait another week, she said, even colder. That's harsh. You disappearing. That's harsh. I knew you'd feel a way about it. Who wouldn't? But you asked me to be your wife, then just disappear. And what is it we need to talk about? You left me. I didn't leave you. I just needed time to... It doesn't matter. That's not how you handle things with your partner. You lost my respect. Whoa. I told you. Then take more time. Hell, take forever. I don't need this right now. I'll give you some more time to cool off. Hopefully we can get to a resolution instead of throwing blows and I don't need more things time. Worse. She shot back. I need you to grow up. You don't propose, then disappear. You're too old for games, Cameron. I don't have anything else to say. Calm down. I am calm. As calm as a pit bull ready to attack an intruder, he muttered. I need you to breathe. Cameron started breathing slowly, deep inhales and exhales. Keisha followed after a beat, trying to keep herself from snapping again. After a few breaths, silence settled in. Then Cameron spoke. I need you to take off the armor, soldier. No one left. We're both still here. I'm still in this. I just needed to think. She continued breathing, slower now, quieter. I know you're upset, he continued, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm sorry if it felt like I disappeared, but if you'd called or texted, I would have answered. What you don't get is, Keisha said softly, is after all I've been through, things like this feel like a threat. It's a signal to put the armor on, but I don't want to live like that. Steel or leather? He asked gently. Steel, she whispered. I can handle the steel, as long as I know the softness is in there, somewhere. You're gonna regret trying. I've regretted less meaningful things, he said, knowing it would make her smile. And it did. I think this is worth the risk, he said. You have the power to hurt me, but I trust you won't use it. And I want you to know that if you gave me that power, I'd never use it either. I understand why you need armor, baby. But with me, it'll be useless. Because I'm not fighting you. I'm fighting for you. Keisha dropped her shoulders and her defenses with that one line. The heavy armor she'd carried since he asked for space disappeared. And just like that, she was mush again. A soft puddle in the center of his palm. God, that man never missed a beat. Camron sat in his parked car long after the call ended. The quiet hum of the engine was the only sound in the space, but inside his chest, everything felt loud. His heartbeat, his thoughts, his fears. She was mad, and she had every right to be. He stared at his phone, her contact still on the screen, and whispered, Damn, Keisha. When she hung up, he didn't feel relief. He didn't feel victorious. He felt like a man trying to catch water with open hands, desperate, overwhelmed, and coming up empty. He hadn't meant to hurt her. He just needed air, time to breathe, time to make sure he wasn't making the biggest mistake of his life, or hers. He wasn't scared of commitment. He was scared of ruining it. Every time he closed his eyes, he could see flashes of what he never wanted to become. His father pacing the house after his mother left again, spewing the same old line about how women only needed you when they were drowning. That image haunted him more than he admitted. He didn't want Keisha to feel like she had to pull him to shore. He wanted to meet her there, swim beside her, not to be another dead weight she had to drag through life. But he didn't know how to say that. Not in a way that would make sense, especially not after going ghost for a week. He tapped his finger on the steering wheel and exhaled. She had called him out, rightfully so. Disappearing wasn't the answer. It never was. But he panicked. That drunken call of hers had cracked something deep in him. She said she was scared. Scared of him becoming another Andre. Scared of being broken again. He didn't blame her. But the idea that she even saw that possibility in him, that gutted him. Because he had never loved anyone the way he loved Keisha. It wasn't just chemistry or vibes or convenience. It was the way she mothered her children with a fierce love. The way she smelled like warm vanilla and quiet strength. The way her laugh made him forget there was ever pain in the world. He didn't love her despite her baggage. He loved her with it. He loved her soft and hard and completely. But now he had to show it. Not with gifts or texts or deep conversations, with consistency, with presence, with staying when things got loud instead of disappearing to think. He had fumbled, no question about it, but he hadn't lost her yet, and he would move heaven and earth not to. He picked up his phone again and opened the thread. He didn't want to text. He wanted to show up. Cameron shifted gears, pulled out of the parking lot, and headed toward the flower shop she loved near downtown. He remembered the name because she mentioned it once. Petals and Poetry. He was going to pick up the biggest damn bouquet they had. Not to fix things, but to say this: I'm here, I'm learning, and I don't plan on leaving again. Keisha had just finished wiping down the kitchen counter when the doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone. Her first thought was Gina probably forgot her charger again. But when she opened the door, no one was there. Just a large cream box tied with an emerald green ribbon sitting neatly on her doormat. She glanced up and down the street, curious, then slowly bent to pick it up. There was no name on the box, but there didn't have to be. She knew. She closed the door and carried it to the kitchen, heart thudding a little harder than she wanted it to. Inside was a bouquet unlike any she'd ever received. Not just the usual red roses or grocery store carnations. No, this was intentional. Deep purple ranunculus, soft blush peonies, creamy garden roses, eucalyptus, and a single bold sunflower nestled right in the middle. Keisha blinked twice. The card attached wasn't store-bought. It was handwritten. His handwriting, neat, blocky, letters with a little curve to the end of his Y's and G's. She already knew what it smelled like before she even lifted it. Him. That warm cologne with hints of wood and something earthy. The card read, "Steel or leather. Doesn't matter. My love is soft enough to get through either. I'm not going anywhere. See." Her throat tightened. She sat down at the counter and stared at the flowers. No words, just feeling. So many feelings she hadn't sorted out yet. Love, anger, fear, hope, exhaustion, longing, all stacked on top of each other like unread messages in her inbox. She'd been ready to let him go just a few days ago, had practiced it in her head like a script. It's not you, it's timing. I love you, but I need peace. Something soft enough to shatter him, but final enough to keep him from chasing her. But then, this. Not just the gesture, but the knowing in it. He remembered her favorite flower, remembered that she loved arrangements that felt like poetry, remembered her, the woman beneath the armor, not the single mother, not the ex-wife, not the girl trying to hold everything together. Her. And maybe she wasn't ready to fall completely back into his arms. Not yet, but she wasn't going to slam the door either. She reached for her phone. "Thank you for the flowers. I felt every word." His reply came almost instantly. "Cameron." "And I meant every one. I'm still here." She stared at the message for a long time, then typed, "Maybe we should talk in person." Cameron. Named the time and the place. She paused, then sent, "Petals and Poetry. Saturday, noon." If they were going to figure this out, they might as well start where the words first bloomed. Cameron had arrived 10 minutes early. He always did when it came to her. The bell over the door gave a soft chime as he stepped into Petals and Poetry, the little boutique flower shop that looked like a dream wrapped in petals. The air was filled with notes of jasmine and lemon balm, and he could already feel the edge of his tension dulling. "She's in the back garden," the attendant said before he could ask. He nodded, taking the slow walk past buckets of blooms and chalkboard signs etched with quotes like "Love grows here" and "Healing takes root when hearts stay open." He found her seated under a canopy of ivy and wisteria, legs crossed, back straight, expression unreadable. She wore a green dress, the color of growth and new beginnings. Or maybe he was just being poetic again. "You're early," Keisha said, not looking up at first. "I was afraid if I wasn't, you'd leave." She smirked faintly, then nodded toward the seat across from her. "Sit." The quiet between them wasn't heavy, but it wasn't light. It was loaded, unsettled. Camron broke it first. "I appreciate the call. I know you didn't have to do that." "I didn't want to keep pretending like nothing happened," she said. "But honestly, I don't remember everything I said that night. Just that I called you and felt awful the next morning." He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, then dropped his voice. "Do you want to know what you said?" Her eyes snapped up to his. "I'm not sure." "You told me you didn't know if you could get married again. You said you were scared that I'd turn into Andre. That you didn't know me, even though it felt like you did. Then you broke down and you cried. You sounded terrified, Keisha. And it wasn't the wine. It was deeper than that." She dropped her gaze to her lap. "Damn. I know you don't remember it clearly, but it stuck with me. And I'll be honest, it messed with my head." He paused. "I kept asking myself, how can I build a future with someone who's already bracing for me to fail her?" She looked up, face open now, soft. "Cameron, I'm sorry." He gave a little nod, like he'd been waiting for that, even if he hadn't admitted it to himself. "You didn't owe me perfection, but I needed honesty, and I got it. Even if it came slurred between sobs." I've been carrying so much fear that sometimes it leaks out of me before I know it's there. But that night, I was drunk and exposed. And you didn't deserve the weight of my past like that. Keisha sighed, her shoulders lowering. He leaned forward. "I didn't disappear because of what you said. I disappeared because I didn't want to become the next scar on your timeline. I needed to check myself, make sure I was steady enough to carry the both of us. I just wish you would have said that instead of vanishing. That felt too familiar. Andre used to do that. Run when it got heavy." "I'm not him," Cameron said, firm but gentle. "But I get that sometimes the echo of the last man drowns out the voice of the one standing in front of you." She nodded, chewing her bottom lip. "And I'm tired of hearing ghosts." He reached across the table and slid his hand over hers. "Then let's get quiet enough to hear each other. No ghosts, no armor." Keisha looked at him, truly looked. "I've been wearing armor so long, I don't even remember what soft feels like." "You let me in once before," he said. "Let me earn my way back. No rushing, no pressure, but I need you to remember, I'm not fighting with you. I'm fighting for you." Her fingers tightened around his. "I meant what I said on the phone," she whispered. "I don't want to keep living behind a wall, but when you pulled away, I panicked. I turned into that version of me I hate, the cold, defensive one, the one who pushes first just to avoid being pushed." "You're not her right now." She exhaled. "I'm sorry for ignoring your text, for trying to end things in my head instead of bringing my fears to you like a partner should." Cameron's thumb brushed the back of her hand. "Thank you for saying that. But I'm still here because I saw the real you in all of that chaos. And I liked her, even scared." even unsure. Keisha's eyes brimmed. I don't want to lose you, but I need to feel safe. Then, let's build safety. Slowly, brick by brick. She stood up without another word and came around to his side of the table. He rose too, pulling her into a gentle, breath-stilling hug, her cheek against his chest. His hand cradled the back of her neck, and for the first time in weeks, silence felt like healing. I swear, girl, I almost sabotaged the whole thing, Keisha said, pacing the kitchen with a glass of peach juice in one hand and her phone on speaker. I told that man I didn't know if I wanted to marry him, then hung up mid-puke. A mess. Gina gasped dramatically through the phone. Wait, you said that to Cameron? You? On wine? Keisha groaned. I didn't remember saying any of it until he told me. And the worst part is, it was all fear talking. That wasn't even me. That was trauma dressed in Chardonnay. Gina burst out laughing. You are so dramatic, I swear. But you gotta admit, at least you didn't throw the phone in the toilet this time. Gina, I'm being serious, Keisha said, collapsing onto the couch with the throw pillow in her lap. I made him think I was still in love with Andre or something. Like I thought he'd do me the same way. Well, I mean, Gina let the silence hang. What? Gina exhaled. I'm just saying, you've been bracing for the worst since you met him. You love him, but you don't trust the good. That man has shown up for you. And yeah, he pulled back a bit, but he circled back to talk it through. That's more than Andre ever did. Keisha nodded, then realized Gina couldn't see her. True. He actually sat me down at that little flower shop by my job. Petals and Poetry? You know, the one with the vines and all the cute ass quotes? Oh, yes. The soft girl sanctuary. Continue. We sat out in the garden. He told me everything I said while I was drunk. Didn't sugarcoat it, but he also didn't throw it in my face. He just wanted me to understand how it made him feel. And girl, he said he's not fighting me. He's fighting for me. Gina let out a soft, surprised, damn. And when I told him about my armor, he didn't flinch. He said he could handle the steel, as long as the softness was in there, somewhere. Whew. Okay, so he's one of the poetic ones. Gina teased. You always did love a good metaphor. Keisha smiled. I melted. That man held my whole heart in the palm of his hand and just spoke to it. That's different, Gina said quietly. I know. Like, really different. Andre couldn't communicate to save his life. You could tell him how you felt, and he'd look at you like you were speaking Morse code. Exactly. And Cameron listened, not just with his ears, with intention. And he didn't get defensive or dismiss me. He stayed. You sound scared. It might actually be real, Gina said. I am. But maybe, Gina added gently, he really is different. Keisha let the silence sit for a moment. It didn't feel heavy this time. It felt real. Like maybe she was finally stepping into something she didn't have to shrink inside of. I think it's time to take off the armor, she said softly. Girl, take it off and let it rest. They both laughed. And Keisha? Yeah, let him love you the way he's trying to. You don't have to carry it all by yourself anymore. Keisha's eyes watered, but she blinked them dry before her daughter walked into the room with a backpack half open. I'll try, she whispered. That's all you need to do, Gina said. Try. Cameron sat on the edge of his sister's patio, nursing a bottle of craft ginger beer and staring off into the twilight. The soft hum of cicadas buzzed in the distance, mixing with the occasional laughter of kids riding bikes down the block. But his mind was still stuck in that garden with Keisha, stuck on her voice trembling when she said, I don't want to live like that. And the way her eyes softened just before she let her guard down. You all right? His sister Talia asked, stepping out with the blanket tossed over her shoulder and an eyebrow already raised. She didn't wait for him to answer. You don't look all right. Camron let out a breath. We talked. I mean, really talked. Oh, she said, pulling up a chair beside him and kicking off her sandals. So, what's with the pity face? It was deep, he said. She told me she wears armor because of all she's been through. But she dropped it for a second, Talia. I saw her, not just the strong mama or the boss woman. I saw her. Talia gave a tight smile. I'm happy for you, Cam, but just remember, one moment doesn't mean the battle's over. He turned to her, eyebrows pinched. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm glad y'all are having deep talks and moonlit apologies, but don't go falling too fast without watching your footing. She sipped her tea and gave him the older sister look, the one that always came with a dose of unsolicited wisdom. She still talks about Andre a lot, doesn't she? Camron hesitated. Not like that. Not like that, but like something. You know what I mean? Talia leaned forward, voice low. Any woman with 5 kids by a man who hurt that deeply and still brings him up regularly, she's not done untangling herself from that pain. And pain is sticky, Cam. She's not in love with him, Camron said quickly. I didn't say she was, Talia replied. But don't confuse not in love with not affected. She's still trying to make sense of the damage. That means she's still inside the mess, emotionally. And if you're not careful, you'll become her cleanup man instead of her partner. Camron sat silently, eyes fixed on a patch of dead grass by his shoe. I'm not saying walk away, Talia added gently. Just don't put your whole heart in her hands while she's still learning how to use her own again. He nodded slowly. She said something to me about armor, like she wears still, and I told her I could handle it, that I wasn't fighting her. I was fighting for her. Talia chuckled sadly. And that's beautiful. Until she gets triggered, until she's in fight or flight. Then what? Camron looked up. She's in survival mode, little brother, Talia said, her voice soft but firm. And in survival mode, you don't think, you react. If she feels even a hint of danger or uncertainty, she's gone. Not physically, but emotionally. She'll shut down, push you out, and protect herself. And you? You'll be the one bleeding while she's walking away with her armor back on. He swallowed hard. And another thing, Talia added. I don't mean no harm, but does she even ask about your pain? Camron blinked. What? Think about it. You told me what she said when she was drunk. How scared she was. How she didn't know you like that. How she was afraid you turned into Andre. You ever notice how it's always his shadow in the room? Never yours. Camron stayed quiet. She talks like she's the only one with wounds. But Cam, you still healing too. Remember what happened with Lisa? Camron clenched his jaw slightly at the name. Talia pressed gently. Lisa told you she loved you, let you meet her son, then got pregnant by her ex, and didn't even tell you until she was 5 months in. She let you build a future with her while stuck in her past. You were all in with her, and she wasn't even done grieving that other man. I know, he said, voice low. And what happened after you found out? I left, Cameron muttered. No, she pushed you out. Talia corrected. Made it feel like it was your fault for not understanding, for not being patient enough while she was busy being reckless with your heart. Cameron shifted in his seat. I'm just saying, doesn't this feel a little familiar? Talia asked. The way Keisha talks about Andre, how she assumes you'll become him, how she disappears into herself instead of leaning on you. Cameron didn't answer, but he wasn't blinking either. His face had gone still. Too still. Talia watched him carefully, voice softer now. Be careful, baby brother. I know you love her, but love with a wounded woman is a battlefield. And you gotta ask yourself, what happens when your pain and her pain crash into each other? Who catches the shrapnel? Cameron looked away, staring out into the dark yard again. She's still in survival mode, Talia whispered. And if she gets triggered, you'll be the one bleeding, not her. The night got real quiet after that. Cameron didn't respond. He just leaned back in his chair and stared up at the stars. Stars that now looked a little less romantic and a little more like warning lights blinking in the distance. And for the first time since meeting Keisha, he wondered if maybe, just maybe, Talia wasn't wrong. This moment felt sharp, like the knife of truth was lodged in his ribcage and he had to lean into the pain just to sort through the confusion. As he approached her door, his hands shook as he reached up to knock. The door creaked open just enough for Keisha to peek out. Her smile cautious but genuine. I wasn't sure if I'd see you tonight, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Neither was I, Cameron murmured, stepping inside. The door clicked shut behind him and silence settled between them, thick and loaded. I need to talk to you, he began, careful and steady. And I don't want this to come out wrong, so I'm just going to say it. Okay. He sank onto the couch, elbows on his knees, hands clasped tight. That knife of truth twisted deeper as the moment of confession drew closer. Yesterday felt good, real, like we were finally moving forward. But today, I couldn't shake this heaviness. Like there was something said I shouldn't be overlooking. Keisha's eyes narrowed slightly. What exactly are you saying? I talked to my sister. I didn't mean to, but she picked up on my energy. I told her the truth, that you've been through a lot, and that I've been trying to love you through it. So she told you to walk away from me. Keisha's tone sharpened, clipped with irritation. No. She told me to protect my peace. And speaking as a woman, she said Andre is brought up a lot more than he should be. Keisha flinched like she'd been slapped. Of course she did. Keisha, you brought it up, she snapped, which means some part of you agrees with her. That's not fair, Cameron said, his voice low but firm. I said it stirred up fears I was already having, stuff I didn't want to admit out loud. Keisha's arm stayed locked across her chest. I've been here before. Family members always have something to say. Hell, even my people were gossiping about you using me. But that shouldn't overpower how we feel about each other. Andre let his family run our situation, and I'm not doing that again. Not even for you. I hear you, he said gently, but I'm not Andre. And Talia is not his mom or his sisters. She's my sister, and her fears are valid. Which of her fears are valid? Her voice rose, trembling with hurt. That I'm going to bring him up? He was the only other man I ever loved. We were married. We had kids, a family. And I'm broken because I'm still affected? No, Cameron said softly. She thinks you're in survival mode, that one emotional trigger could make you run. Keisha's shoulders slumped. She's not wrong. The honesty hit him hard. For a moment, he didn't know how to respond. She sat beside him, her voice more tender now. But I told you, I don't want to live in that mindset anymore, Cameron. I really don't. But it's hard to turn off because it's protected me from other men like Andre. And when your people start questioning me, it makes me feel like I'm just some woman with baggage, trying to prove I'm worthy of love. That's not helping. He turned to her, eyes shining. That's not how I see you. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared. You're not the only one affected, Keisha. We both have scars. And what happens when my fears clash with yours? She met his gaze, then reached for his hand, pressing it gently against her chest. Cameron, you said you'd fight for me. Baby, I need you to fight now. I need you to see what you want me to see. That just because it happened before doesn't mean it's happening again. I'm still in this, and we've worked hard to build something deeper than what either of us had before. Don't give up now. I'm not giving up, Keisha, he said, voice breaking. But I have to know I'm not just a man picking up the pieces. I need to know your heart is mine. It is, she said, tears in her eyes. It always has been, since the day we met. No man has ever poured into me the way you do. Cameron felt that blade twist deeper in his chest. He knew Keisha loved him, but in that moment, her expectations weighed heavy enough for him to want to run. Because being loved for what you're not isn't the same as being loved for who you are. He swallowed hard. So, do you love me because I give you what Andre couldn't, or do you love me for me? Keisha blinked, stunned. That wasn't what she meant at all. Cameron. Her voice cracked under the weight of everything unsaid. Tell me what you want me to do. You want me to let you go? No. I don't want to walk away. I think we need space. Not to break up. Not to cancel anything. Just space to think clearly. 30 days. I already reached out to Pastor Greg. I want us to talk to him. Get clarity. Her lip trembled. I hate that we're here. Me too. The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was full of ache and understanding. Keisha finally whispered, Okay, let's take a break. As long as it's to breathe and not to detach. Cameron nodded slowly. Space, not distance. Just don't shut me out completely, she said, her voice barely audible. I won't. They rose together. Their embrace was long and heavy, like they were holding on to the last piece of something fragile. He kissed her forehead, then turned to leave. As he reached his car, his phone buzzed with a message from Keisha. You fought for me, and I'll fight for us, even when you're unsure. He exhaled deeply, the weight of her words settling onto his chest, but he didn't reply. Not yet. Keisha woke up the next morning with the kind of headache that only comes from crying all night. Ever since the engagement, it felt like their union had been tested and tried. Family gossip, ex-drama, triggers. Now his sister wanted to put in her bid for the this won't work train. It felt like they got so close to a resolution only to be pulled back into the conflict again. That kind of whiplash reminded her of Andre, but she acknowledged that Camron wasn't Andre. And even though her feelings were hurt, she couldn't ignore how many times she had brought Andre up. Still, her head pounded and her heart ached from Cameron's absence. The pain deepened when she realized she wouldn't be waking up to one of his beautiful good morning texts. A knock at the door was followed by Gina's voice calling out before she let herself in. I brought carbs and comfort. Gina announced, nudging the door closed with her foot. Which one you want first? Keisha looked up, her eyes tired but dry. Both, she said. Gina set the food down and dropped onto the couch beside her, peeling open a container of fries and shoving one toward Keisha like a peace offering. So, talk to me, Gina said after a beat. What happened? Keisha didn't answer right away. Her eyes dropped to her lap as she picked up the edge of a napkin. We didn't break up. Just taking a break. For clarity. Gina blinked. Girl, what? After all that progress? Yeah, Keisha whispered. Came over. We talked. He said he felt like he was ignoring things that shouldn't be ignored. That we needed space. 30 days. Then we talked to Pastor Greg. But y'all just made up, Gina exclaimed. Didn't he show up with flowers and all that soft poetic stuff? You said he was present, breathing with you, for God's sake. Keisha gave a small, sad nod. I thought we were past it, but his sister said something that got to him and said I talked about Andre too much or something like that. Gina rolled her eyes hard. So you're not supposed to talk about the man you loved for 15 years? That's ridiculous. Right? But it's not just that. It's how I compare Camron to Andre. She also told him I'm still in survival mode. That if I ever hit a fight or flight moment, he'd be the one to get hurt, not me. Gina went quiet, choosing her words carefully. Okay. That's not completely untrue, but still, it's not her place to say. And it definitely shouldn't outweigh your voice. I told him that, Keisha said, her voice trembling. I asked why her opinion mattered more than my truth. I've lived through nosy, opinionated family before. I won't go back to that. What did he say? He said it already bothered him, that it wasn't just her voice. So we agreed to take a break. He said it wasn't goodbye, just air. Keisha laughed bitterly. But it feels like rejection again. Gina reached out and pulled her into a hug. Keisha melted into it, letting herself rest for just a moment. This could be good for you both, Gina said gently. Maybe you do have some healing left. You don't want another unsure man pushing through. You want an intentional man working through with you. If this space gives Cameron time to decide which one he is for you, let him. I know, Keisha whispered, pulling back, but it still hurts. Gina didn't argue. The truth was, healing didn't always feel like progress. Sometimes it felt like breaking in new ways. And even with a man who showed up, who breathed through the chaos with her, there were still shadows to wrestle with. Even healing hurts sometimes, Gina said, handing her the tray of chow mein and a fork. Keisha nodded, letting the words settle as she grabbed the tray and began eating her fillings. Maybe she needed the pause too, not because she wanted distance, but because she needed to be with herself long enough to know if she felt safe removing the armor for Cameron when he came back. The first few days felt hollow. Camron kept the house quiet on purpose. No playlists, no TV humming in the background. He needed silence to hear himself think. But even in the silence, he found himself checking Instagram for the memes Keisha used to send during her sleepless nights. He'd reach for her during his favorite shows only to touch the cold cushions instead of her warm legs. He missed the smell of her perfume on the passenger seat during their lunch break dates on Wednesdays. And he broke down the moment he realized he needed a hug after hearing bad news about his grandmother's health. Despite all of that, he couldn't pinpoint to one specific reason he missed her. He just did. He missed her essence, her energy, the way she could make him smile with a single look. He hadn't realized how deeply she'd woven herself into the rhythm of his life until she wasn't in it anymore. At night, he'd stare at the ceiling, her messages still unread in his inbox. You fought for me and I'll fight for us, even when you're unsure. He hadn't replied, for fear of being prematurely pulled back into her warmth. Her words were sure and comforting, but he couldn't afford to let them drown out his own intuition. Still, he questioned whether his fear was justified or if he was just scared of being loved that deeply in the first place. He met with Pastor Greg like he promised, determined to make this space meaningful and not an excuse to withdraw. "I told her I wanted to make sure this was best for the both of us," Cameron said. Pastor Greg nodded slowly. "And do you want it to be?" "I do, but I'm scared my trauma is showing up as protection. I'm starting to confuse caution with avoidance." They talked for nearly 2 hours about Lisa, about his father's absence, and about how Cameron coped by carrying everything alone until it crushed him. Afterward, he spent more time journaling, something Keisha had encouraged months ago. He wrote the things he never said out loud, like how seeing her with Andre during school drop-offs stirred something ugly in him. Not because he didn't trust her, but because he didn't fully believe someone like her could choose someone like him without some emotional strings still tied to the past. And then there was Talia. Her warning echoed more now than it had in the moment. Keisha is still in survival mode. If she ever hits fight or flight again, you're the one who'll bleed. Camron wanted to believe Keisha would fight for him, but part of him kept waiting for her to run. And deeper still, he knew he was running too. Around day 22, he pulled out the poem Keisha had written during their petals and poetry night. It was about how deeply she felt for him, how although he had never seen her naked, she'd bared parts of herself no man had ever touched. He read it twice, then 3 times more. It was raw, intimate, and for the first time in weeks, he let himself feel everything. Her vulnerability, her hope, her pain, and then he cried. Not for her, but for himself. Because he was finally realizing he wasn't afraid she'd leave. He was afraid she'd stay, and that he'd mess it up anyway. Keisha never knew quiet could feel like this. It wasn't loneliness, exactly. More like stillness. Like standing in the middle of a room that used to be filled with warmth, trying to remember where everything went. Cameron's absence was everywhere, in the smallest, strangest ways. Lunch breaks felt longer. Work days felt heavier without his reassurance. She missed his voice in her ears, saying things she once only dreamed of hearing. Missed his smile and the way it could brighten her entire day. She didn't just miss him, she missed the feeling of him. His strength, his protection, that quiet, ever-present connection that made her feel like one half of something sacred. His presence had become a comfort she didn't realize she relied on. And even though they'd never made love, he had touched and claimed a part of her no man ever had, the center of her soul. His absence echoed louder than the silence on the phone when she got her promotion and realized she couldn't call him. But she didn't crumble. She still celebrated. She lit candles anyway, played the R&B vinyl he bought her for Valentine's Day, still woke up early, got the kids to school, journaled most nights before bed. It was hard not to text him, especially after a long day, or when her daughter asked if Mr. Cam would be coming back around. But she remembered Gina's words. You don't want another unsure man pushing through. You want an intentional man working through with you. So she gave him space. And in that space, she learned more about herself than she expected. She started running again, remembering how Cameron once said running helped him through dark days. Movement heals, he told her. And he'd always offered her those quiet tools, gentle nudges toward healing disguised as casual conversation. She missed how he listened, really listened. With Andre, she'd learned to shrink her pain into bite-sized pieces so he wouldn't feel burdened. But with Camron, he made space for the whole story, even the parts she couldn't say out loud. Keisha found herself reaching for the things he'd encouraged: drinking more water, reading before bed, holding boundaries with toxic people. His love hadn't just been romantic, it had been restorative. And now that he wasn't around, she could feel the imprint of that love in her daily routine. But the space also forced her to face the hard truths. She still struggled to fully receive love. Every time things got too good, she prepared for heartbreak. That was survival mode. And even if she didn't want to live there anymore, she still checked the exits before entering the building. Toward the end of the 30 days, she reread the letter she'd written but never sent. Notes filled with apologies, longing, and little updates. She never hit send, but she read them all. She had long talks with Gina, who reminded her, "A man who sees your wounds and still chooses you? That's not common. And Cameron, he sees you." Keisha nodded but said nothing, because she knew what Gina didn't. That night, when Cameron hesitated, it triggered her survival mode, kicked it into full gear. But she was fighting hard to stop it from taking over. Fighting for their love. Fighting for him. Just like she promised she would. Just like she hoped he was fighting too. On the final night, she sat on the porch, looking up at the sky. She whispered into the stillness, "I hope you still want this. I really do." And even though she hadn't heard from him in weeks, part of her believed he was whispering the same thing from wherever he was. Cameron's hands gripped the wheel tighter than usual. His palms were dry, but the back of his neck felt damp. The sun had dipped low, casting golden streaks across the windshield as he turned onto the familiar street leading to Pastor Greg's counseling office. It had been exactly 30 days. 30 days of noise and silence, of remembering her laugh mid-conversation and then catching himself, of wondering if she still whispered his name when no one else could hear, of rereading her last text more times than he'd ever admit. "You fought for me, and I'll fight for us, even when you're unsure." It echoed every time he tried to convince himself that space was the right decision. Now he wasn't so sure. The closer he got to the church building, the heavier everything felt. Like love wrapped in uncertainty. Like walking towards something beautiful, with bruised knees and no armor. He hadn't seen her face since that night. He hadn't heard her voice except in memory. He pulled into the lot and sat there for a moment, watching the glow of the street lamp flicker on. His reflection stared back at him in the rearview mirror, tired, anxious, but ready. Keisha sat in her parked car, watching the entrance. Her fingers toyed with the edge of her journal, the one she brought just in case she needed to write through the moment before it swallowed her whole. She hadn't expected the nerves. She'd spent the last 30 days working on herself, and still, tonight felt like the biggest test of all. Like the future was waiting just beyond those doors, and all she had to do was show up, honestly. She wondered if he'd changed his mind, if space made him realize that her baggage really was too heavy, or worse, that maybe he liked the quiet more than he liked them. She looked down at her outfit. Simple, soft, intentional. Just like the way she wanted to love him. But would that be enough? Just then, she saw a familiar car pull into the lot. Her breath caught. Cameron. He stepped out, closed the door, and paused before walking toward the building. She stayed in her car a second longer, hand over her chest as if she could calm her own heartbeat. Inside the church, Pastor Greg waited quietly in his office, soft jazz humming from the speaker. 2 chairs were set across from his desk, angled toward each other. Close, but not too close. Neutral territory for 2 souls trying to find their way back. Camron walked in first. eyes scanning the room before settling on the empty chair beside his. He stood behind it instead of sitting. Moments later, Keisha entered. She paused in the doorway, locking eyes with him. For a second, neither moved. There was no embrace, no smile, just eyes that said, "I still see you, even through the hurt." She stepped forward slowly, taking her seat. He sat beside her. Still, no words. Just two people sitting in the echo of everything unsaid. And in that quiet space, Pastor Greg looked up, smiled gently, and said, "Welcome back. Let's begin." The low hum of jazz faded as Pastor Greg turned the music down and leaned forward, folding his hands. 30 days, he said gently. "I know it hasn't been easy." Cameron nodded but stayed quiet. Keisha glanced over at him, then focused on her lap. Pastor Greg gave a soft smile, the kind that didn't rush you but made you feel seen. "I'd like to begin not with the relationship, but with each of you. What have you learned in this space apart?" Cameron exhaled slowly. "That I missed her, even when I didn't think I would." Keisha looked over, surprised at the honesty. "I learned that love doesn't fix fear," Cameron continued. "It exposes it, and sometimes it confuses the two." Pastor Greg nodded. "What was the fear, Cameron?" Cameron hesitated. "That I was just the bandage. That once she was whole, she wouldn't need me anymore. That I'd be what Andre wasn't, but never really seen for who I am." He looked down, ashamed to admit it out loud. Keisha's voice cracked through the silence. "You are seen." Cameron looked at her, eyes glossy. "Sometimes it felt like I was just a softer landing after the storm. Like you loved me, but out of relief, not choice." "I chose you," Keisha whispered, holding his gaze. "Every single time. But I was in survival mode. I know that now." Pastor Greg turned gently to Keisha. "And what did you learn during this time?" Keisha's breath shook as she answered, "That healing is my responsibility. That no matter how good love is, it can't replace the work I have to do in myself." Cameron swallowed hard. "I learned that Cameron doesn't just show up for me. He makes me better. He challenged my routines, pushed me to face things I buried, and when he stepped back, I realized how much I leaned on his strength." She paused, voice faltering. "But I didn't just wait for him to come back. I journaled, I prayed, I cried, and I kept showing up for myself and my kids. Because I want to bring a whole woman to this love, not just a woman surviving." Pastor Greg let the weight of her words settle. "And now?" he asked, voice low and warm. "What do you both want now? Not out of fear or habit, but out of desire and clarity." Cameron spoke first. "I want us, but not the version built on patching wounds. I want the version where we see each other clearly and choose each other daily, even when it's hard." Keisha nodded, eyes full. "I want us too. And I want to keep healing, with him beside me, not carrying me, not fixing me, just loving me honestly while I do the work." Pastor Greg smiled. "That's a hopeful place to begin." He reached for a folder and pulled out a page. "These are the questions we'll explore over the next few sessions about triggers, trust, and the future. But for now, I just want you two to look at each other and tell the truth." Keisha turned to Cameron. Cameron turned to Keisha. A silence passed between them. Not heavy this time, but sacred. "I'm still in this," she said, voice thick. "Even when I'm unsure, even when I'm scared. Cameron reached out, resting his hand over hers. I'm not here to save you, he said quietly. I'm here to love you and grow beside you. Pastor Greg closed the folder and leaned back with a peaceful nod. Then we're right on time. The rain outside tapped gently against the church windows. Inside, the mood was quieter, more reflective. Keisha sat a little straighter on the couch this time. Cameron's body language was relaxed but guarded, like he came prepared to be honest but unsure how it would land. Pastor Greg adjusted his glasses and looked up from his notes. Today, he said gently, I want us to talk about defensiveness, not as a flaw, but as a shield. Something people use when they don't feel safe, and something that can unintentionally harm the people trying to love them. He looked to Keisha. Are you open to talking about that today? Keisha hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yeah. Good. Let's start with you, Cameron. What does her defensiveness feel like to you? Cameron cleared his throat. Like I'm always one wrong sentence away from being shut out. He didn't say it harshly, just truthfully. That after all the work I've put in to show her I'm not Andre, if I say or do something that even looks similar, I get placed in that same box. She starts to feel like I'm controlling or manipulative, and I lose all her respect with one move. Keisha blinked hard, but stayed quiet. I'm not trying to control her. Cameron continued. I just want to understand her, but sometimes it feels like me having feelings makes me the enemy, and that hurts. Pastor Greg turned to Keisha. Do you recognize that pattern? He asked. Keisha bit her lip. Yeah, I do. Where do you think that comes from? She exhaled slowly. I've had to defend myself most of my life. From Andre, from his family, from my own doubts. I got used to always being on guard because I was always being blamed, even when I was the one bleeding. Her voice trembled. So when Cameron brings something up, even if it's valid, it hits that old wound. And I go into defense mode. Not because I don't trust him, but because I still don't fully trust that I'm safe. The room went still with understanding. Cameron reached over, gently rubbing her back. I never want to be another person you have to brace yourself for, he said. I want to be your soft space, but you gotta let me. Keisha looked at him, her eyes shimmering. I want to, I do. But sometimes my mouth moves before my heart gets a chance to explain. Pastor Greg leaned forward. Deep down, do you feel Cameron wants the best for you? Do you feel this is different from your former marriage? Keisha looked surprised by the question. Of course. Cameron is nothing like Andre, not even in the beginning. Pastor Greg leaned back. Then what's the struggle with trust? I was always told not to trust a man, that they'd mess you up and ruin you. Then I met Andre, and that's exactly what happened. So I don't know if I can trust what I see or if I should stay cautious just to stay safe. That's the definition of survival mode, Pastor Greg said with a soft chuckle, placing a reassuring hand on Keisha's leg. Caution doesn't keep you safe any more than holding a gun guarantees you won't get shot. It just keeps people at a distance, but not everyone trying to get close wants to hurt you. Your defenses are keeping Cameron from getting close. If you believe you've done the work to prove he's safe, why keep dragging him through the process? Don't you trust the parts of you that declared him safe in the first place? Keisha struggled to respond because that was exactly it. She didn't trust that soft part of herself, the part that had let Andre in, even through red flags and warnings. Her eyes filled with tears, but she stayed silent. So, Pastor Greg continued. He turned to both of them. When you feel that heat rising, Keisha, Try asking yourself, what's really being said? What does Cameron need from me in this moment? And Cameron, when you sense her getting defensive, instead of reacting, try gently saying, I'm not attacking you. I just want to understand you. They both nodded. I want to challenge you two with something. Pastor Greg added, this week, I want you to talk about something uncomfortable without trying to solve it. Just listen, just hold space, and when the urge to defend or fix it comes, breathe through it. Sit in it. He looked at Keisha. You survived a lot, but you're safe now. And sometimes love isn't about proving anything, it's about allowing. Keisha swallowed, her throat tight. I hear you. And Cameron, he said gently, you're not wrong to want to feel chosen, but that fear of being used as a band aid, that's your work, not hers to constantly disprove. Cameron nodded, voice soft. I understand. The session ended with no grand conclusion, just soft hands, still tangled together, and a shared willingness to try again. The sun was warmer today, and yet there was a noticeable chill in the room. Cameron sat with his shoulders slightly hunched, fingers interlaced tightly in his lap. Keisha noticed. For the first time in a long time, she saw how tired his eyes looked. Pastor Greg, seated across from them, glanced between the two and asked gently, Cameron, how are you doing today? Honestly. Cameron hesitated, then gave a faint smile. I'm good. Pastor Greg raised an eyebrow. All right, let me ask a different way. When was the last time you let Keisha see you hurting? Keisha turned to him slowly, curiosity blooming across her features. Cameron looked down at his hands, twisting his watch. I really don't do that. Why not? Pastor Greg pressed. Calm, but firm. He exhaled. Because she's been through enough. Because she's still healing. Because I thought it was my job to be the strong one. Keisha frowned slightly. But I want to be there for you too. Cameron glanced at her, voice low. You say that, but it's hard to believe when every time I've had a moment of doubt, it's drowned out by yours. Silence fell like a slow-moving tide. I'm not blaming you, he added quickly, but somehow along the way, I stopped letting myself feel anything loudly because I didn't want to add weight to what you were already carrying. Keisha blinked, the realization settling heavy in her chest. And now?